just in time for the AI takeover, scientists create the basics of the T-1000 style liquid metal.
I'm thinking that it's time to take all of my money and invest in companies that install molten steel vats, like big vats of molten steel in your house.
Doing your ant communism, and then all of a sudden some capitalist pours a bunch of metal in your house.
Texas measles outbreak has tripled since our last report.
I'm debating in my head whether like the parents of unvaccinated children should be held accountable when their children die from that disease, because it is the parents' fault.
So that's interesting that you called them ignorant, because every anti-vaxxer I've ever argued with actually knows everything.
Hello, how the tech are you? This is our mostly weekly tech show on Eplex Media. We talk about science and tech news and other science and tech stuff we feel like talking about. I am historian Matt. I am a co-producer and co-host on the show. My other co-hosts will introduce themselves before they for their sections. So I'm going to jump into my stories. I've got two. One is a little scary, and the second one is scary, but it's a follow-up for the previous one, so it'll be a lot shorter. But quickly, just in time for the AI takeover, scientists create the basics of the T-1000 style liquid metal. So you remember the T-1000 from the movie Terminator 2? It was that one Terminator that could turn all silvery and like liquid when it wanted to, and it could like shift into any kind of like shape it wanted to or needed to at the time. Well, scientists have figured out the basics of making the T-1000 happen just in time, for the AI to take over the world. Otger Kompas, I'm probably destroying that name, but that's what I'm going with. But he's a professor at Max Planck Institute of Molecular Biology and Genetics in Dresden, Germany. He drew inspiration from cells in embryos, which have some similar mechanics to what the T-1000 does. But his team built a robotic collective where each robot behaved as sort of like an embryo cell. The collective as a whole could act as a solid or a liquid. And when formed into a cube and, a solid, the robot collective could hold up the human weighing about 70 kilograms. So each individual robot is about 5 centimeters in diameter. That is way bigger than what is needed to be, a T-1000 style robot collective thing. But they think they can shrink the robots. They're pretty sure they can shrink it down, each robot down to about 1 centimeter fairly easily. But going smaller, and particularly getting down to about like 1 millimeter, which is about the limit or about the the maximum size you need to do something like T-1000 would be quite a bit harder. What do you guys think?
Would these things be able to like clean under my bed?
I don't know. Currently, no. But maybe one day, because they did talk about it like being able to form into like a long, they didn't really say a rope, but long tube of it or something, or length, and it can hold up like a few kilograms that way, not a whole person. But that would be something that could go into your bed.
I'm thinking that it's time to take all of my money and invest in companies that install molten steel vats, like big vats of molten steel in your house.
Right. Because that is proven to be the best way to deal with T-1000 Terminators, right? Yeah.
Also, totally safe to smelt in your house. Oh, I like that T-1000 Terminator. I liked how he showed up on the X-Files like 15, 20 years later, too. Good for him.
Yeah.
Not steel, but I've seen people smelt aluminum in their backyards. Like aluminum, I believe, is like a much lower melting temperature than steel.
Yeah.
But people make aluminum casts of the most horrifying one I've seen is people make these aluminum casts of anthills. So they pour molten aluminum down into an anthill and then let it cool off and then dig it all up and get all the dirt out. And you end up with this cast of aluminum in the shape of like the voids in that anthill, which it would be absolutely horrifying to be one of those ants where you're just, living your life in your house and then all of a sudden your house is flooded with molten metal.
Yeah.
Doing your ant communism, and then all of a sudden some capitalist pours a bunch of metal in your house.
Yep.
Probably sells it online.
Perfect metaphor for the United States.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did to South America, but that's a whole different show. That's a show we don't even have.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. This is so. The headline is a little bit misleading, right? Because they're not even close to what because that T-1000 thing, it, as far as I could tell, is basically as thin as you could get a liquid. Any liquid is how like the thinnest it could be. So it could be like technically like I don't know, a couple microns thick even.
Are you accusing my source, Ars Technica, of clickbait?
Hey man, they got to pay the bills too.
Yeah, that's why I repeated the title.
This is not that terrifying yet.
Not yet. Close.
But we are hurtling towards a dystopian future.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's more like the movie Brazil than any other like dystopian future. It's like Brazil is like a dystopia in which nothing really works.
Yeah. And all our leaders are incompetent, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, whatever. What do you got next,
Like
Matt?
Idiocracy.
All right. Next story it's a follow-up to what was like 2 weeks ago, a topic I had, which is basically had to do with the Texas measles outbreak. Well, this week, or by this week, Texas measles outbreak has tripled since our last report. So the cases are now at 146. Of those cases, 20 people were hospitalized, and unfortunately, one unvaccinated school-age child has died of measles. And as I said before, just to be repeated, the cases are largely among the unvaccinated. Sorry, it's a downer story, but what do you guys think?
So I saw somebody that had posted that their 2-month-old had contracted measles, and they were awfully pissed off because I guess at 2 months you don't get the MMR vaccine yet, and so the lady seemed pretty fucking pissed off. So that was what I saw. I don't know if it was like, I don't remember where I saw it, so I don't know if it's I don't know if somebody was, if it was. I didn't fact check it, is what I'm saying, but
right,
because it just came across my feed on that horrible website that I shouldn't be on, except that I'm addicted to it.
Yeah.
I'm debating in my head whether like the parents of unvaccinated children should be held accountable when their children die from that disease, because it is the parents' fault. Like unquestionably, it's the parents' fault that their kid is dead. Yeah. But it's their fault because they're ignorant, So like we do have laws about like you can't just put a child in a dangerous situation and then the child dies and you go, scot-free. There are laws about being held accountable in that situation, but they don't cover things like not getting your child vaccinated. And maybe we should rethink that. Maybe, if you choose to not vaccinate your child, you're putting yourself in legal jeopardy if your child dies from that disease. That's I think the best approach.
So that's interesting that you called them ignorant, because every anti-vaxxer I've ever argued with actually knows everything.
There is a religious community there. I forget which one, and that is the reason most of these, or for most of the, lack of vaccination in that area, most of the children not being vaccinated. Again, I don't know which one. It's a lot harder to, go after people if they're doing something because of their religious beliefs, even if their religious beliefs are stupid and dangerous.
I think there's.
I think
where you're talking about, there's a big Mennonite community.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You're not allowed to perform human sacrifice if your religion calls for it. So, like, why should you be allowed to not protect your children just because your religion tells you should put them in danger?
But I saw Q Patriot 1776 on BitChute say that people like you and me do in fact perform human sacrifices.
Yeah, well, these people are actually harming their children, so
Yeah, I don't know.
I think they should be held liable.
I feel like it's like, I feel like this maybe in like other countries they might be able to do that, but in the United States I feel like the laws and like case law around like religious freedom here, we're like a country that lets Scientology be a religion. So like they just get a lot of like, it's a lot of like privilege and in a lot of cases privilege to skirt rules and regulations that might apply to other people or other organizations. So I couldn't see wouldn't see a way in which in the United States it wouldn't shake out exactly down those lines.
Unfortunately, I think you're right, even though it shouldn't be that way.
I want to point out though, like, and we've kind of alluded to this earlier, but didn't point out, but with there's so few people getting vaccinations in this area, first of all, they don't have the herd immunity, so measles is spreading, obviously, and we have a big outbreak going. But these people not getting vaccinated, they're not just endangering themselves or their children, but they're also endangering anybody around them that may not be able to get a vaccination. And the vaccinations themselves are not 100% effective. So I didn't write down the number, but a few of these cases are actually in I think children that were vaccinated. Now, hopefully they didn't get as bad a case, because that's, vaccination just doesn't just mean you don't get it. It often makes it a not as severe case, right?
Sometimes possibly even asymptomatic.
Or an asymptomatic is right, yeah.
And I was seeing, I was looking at the beginning of this, some of the numbers at some of the, especially like the private schools, were like sub 30%.
Yeah.
And that's,
I think overall, I haven't looked at the numbers, and we had it like 2 weeks ago. I had the numbers for it, but it was something like overall, it was like 86% vaccination and rate, and you needed like 95 against measles to have herd immunity.
Right, but that was including some public schools where the rate approached 100%.
Right.
So,
but yeah, measles is a particularly nasty bug when it comes to like the ability for it to spread to other people.
It's a very, very contagious disease. Yeah. I forget, somebody we watched something, if you could imagine, on our show last night, where someone described the chicken pox and then said that's what measles is like. I was like, well, no, that's the chicken pox that you just described, which we also have a vaccine for, but, it was less important, let's say, to have a vaccine for chicken pox. And I'm old enough that I just got chicken pox, right? I didn't, the vaccine wasn't out. I went and got the shingles vaccine as an adult, though, because boy, howdy, do I not want the shingles. Oh, God.
Yeah.
This is, this was just another case where I remember when I first started podcasting, people are like, why are you talking about these freaks? And I said, hey, you better look out, buddy. There's a lot more of these people than you think there are. And this is way more important than you think it is. And I wish I would have been wrong. And that we would have just been on the outskirts, and that I wish I never would have been hit up by mainstream media organizations to talk about the work I've been doing. I wish things would have gone drastically differently. Shout out to Kaylee at 538, by the way. Very, very nice, very nice person. There's nothing. I mean, I don't know if there's anything we can do here, because you can't force medical treatment on people. First of all, like, what are you going to do? Hold them down and vaccinate them? But then secondly, like, it's just there's a nasty history of humans doing any kind of forced medical treatment, and you can't do it. And I just feel like with the popularity of things like QAnon, but not just QAnon, just the popularity of the anti-vaccine movement, and the way that especially now, the guardrails are off on like social media now, because the people that run the companies feel like their company might get punished by the U.S. government if they're to try to throttle the reach or remove content of this type. Now, like I don't know, man. I don't know. I've now starting to think about just screwing my door shut. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, we're becoming very proud of our ignorance.
Well, and it's one of those things where, it's not really an excuse, but it's partly a reason, is that something like the measles vaccine is just a victim of its own success, where people don't understand what this disease is like, because they've never seen it. They've never talked to anybody who had it, because all but eradicated for quite some time. Yeah. And I think the first outbreak was either at Disneyland or Disney World, but we're talking like a few people got it.
Yeah, we were very close to completely eradicating measles.
Well, I'm not sure that's like, I know what you're saying, like right through vaccination. I'm not sure it's possible to like eradicate it to the point where maybe vaccines are no longer necessary because it won't come back. That's, I think, probably impossible. I don't think that's how disease works.
Well, we can do it. We've done it with smallpox, basically. But you'd have to eradicate it. You'd have to have sufficient vaccination rates worldwide, and we can't even do that in the United States. And we're so proud of our stupidity, we voted him for president.
Well, and it's, I think that this outbreak would have been happening regardless. I think that the to the extent that I even want to talk about who the president is, that's like a symptom of like a much larger problem where people are, they don't, first of all, it's funny because obviously like I've had a lot more experience like trying to talk to people about this stuff. One of the members of our Twitch community actually came around on all this stuff because of watching me and eventually jumping in the Discord to talk to me. And I think that, I just remember that conversation where this guy was like so sure that it wasn't like so much that he was an anti-vaxxer, right? He was a fan of a certain influencer who used to broadcast from a wooden room. And it took like a half an hour of just talking to this person and being like, hey, what if you applied the same skepticism that you're applying to the mainstream? If you start maybe applying that to the alternative media as well and start to understand that there are perverse influences and perverse like incentives over there too, primarily like that sensationalism sells. And, it wasn't right away, but it worked. But like, that's like one person. There's no way. I'm like, how do you do that? What does everybody need? Now half of the people probably are anti-vaxxers. Does everybody need a calm, cool, and collected friend who understands like what's going on? Yikes.
Yep.
I mean, once we bring back measles and polio and rubella and mumps and people, end up being horribly scarred for life or even, dying as children, once the rate of that increases high enough, people will go, oh shit, the vaccines were actually good. Yep. But,
maybe
it's going to take a lot of people dying before they realize that, those things that we were using that were saving our lives, those were actually good. So it's like being a scuba diver and thinking like, what the fuck do I have this regulator for? I'm not drowning. And then just like ripping it out of your mouth and throwing it away. And they go, oh, because I can't breathe water. That's why,
So if you could imagine, if there's claims now are being made that the MMR vaccine has been replaced with an mRNA version of the vaccine, which isn't true. And that's why people are now getting measles. That's the and I'm not saying that most people believe it. I'm just saying that more than 10% of people probably believe it. And like, then what do you do? Now they're just blaming. They're like, oh, don't get the vaccine. Now that's what's giving you measles. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. I don't know. I know this is supposed to be a tech show, but like, I don't know. There's no technology that's going to fix this. It's not going to be AI. You would probably, I bet the AI is an anti-vaxxer if you ask it the question the right way.
I mean, like I said, it's just going to take a lot of people dying. And unfortunately, it's not only going to be the people who are making the stupid decisions of not vaccinating themselves. It's going to be the children of those people, and it's going to be the people around them who can't vaccinate. And it's going to be healthy people who did make the choice to vaccinate but got the disease anyway.
Right. We were talking about it.
Innocent people are going to die because of this.
We were talking a little bit about it last night, and it's like everybody's body's different, and the vaccine is going to have different amounts of effectiveness on different people for a variety of different reasons. And that's why we count on herd immunity. I don't know. I just wouldn't recommend anybody have a child right now, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Certainly not in Texas.
Or anyway, hold on. I mean, I don't want to say anything, but I'd be interested to see what the vaccination rates look like in New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I wouldn't imagine they're on the uptick.
Yeah.
And measles can travel.
I'd imagine in San Francisco they're probably pretty good.
But measles can travel from Texas anyway. It's not like they're It's not like all my diseases live in Texas. I don't know. Maybe there's a song there. Maybe there's a satire that could be done there.
So one last thing I want to add that's absolutely terrible. I don't have it in my notes, but it was in the original article. People are speculating on the source of the measles outbreak, who was the first one to bring it in. And of course, some of these ignorant people are trying to blame it on immigrants, saying an immigrant brought it in, but there's no one way or the other. Like, we don't know the source yet as of now, but usually in past measles outbreaks, it's been somebody who's an American who just went abroad and came back and brought it in with them.
Right. And in this case, in this case, because it was probably kind of already floating around anyway, like before like the real outbreak. I don't know if we're even going to have a patient zero. And I feel like if they find somebody who is supposedly the patient zero, I feel like it'd be a really good time to practice a little bit of skepticism and a little bit of wait and see. Because you know, just all things considered right now. All things considered, we should practice a little bit of wait and see. Because you know, I could imagine them saying, well, you know, look at these people visited Africa. It must have been these people, or these people visited Honduras. It must have been, you know, this person or whatever. And I'm just saying that it would be a good idea for everybody to slow down and maybe not try to blame any individual for this, because it's not going to be like one individual's fault. Because one individual catches measles, the whole point of herd immunity is that they're the only ones that get it.
Yeah. But also don't blame entire groups of people because you have some preconceived notion of where it came from.
Well, you can certainly blame the anti-vaxxers.
Okay.
Because
that's one group you can blame.
There's a word I'm looking for what is the word? It's an ideology. And part of that ideology is that the outgroup carries diseases. I'm trying to think of the word for that ideology. Maybe I'll hold my fascist tongue.
Well, I was going to say if I know.
Thanks for checking out the what is this show called? This is How the Tech Are You? We try to do this show every week. And if you want to check out the rest of our stuff, you can go to echoplexmedia.com and click one of these two things or you will get measles. Have a great tech and week.